Hello, this is Cathy. Welcome to the Cinemile, the podcast where I normally walk to and from the cinema with my husband Dave. However, today I'm neither walking nor with Dave because I'm going to see Ocean's 8 and I've assembled a crack team of women, one of whom is Hannah Maguire, the RedHanded podcast co-host. And hello, Hannah.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So the RedHanded podcast, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of the UK's foremost true crime podcasts. Hannah and I met at the British podcast earlier this year, along with Saruti, her co-host, who couldn't come tonight. And our other guest is Andrea Mann, who is a listener of the Cinemile, who got in touch with us once. So we chatted back and forth and I invited her on because she's one of the more accomplished people who've emailed us in the past. So she's just told me she used to be a jazz singer. Hello, Andrea.
Hello.
She's also a writer, does loads of other things, and is a Labour councillor.
This is true, yes.
Yeah.
And we've come tonight. We're going to the Curzon Mayfair cinema, which is a little shout out for the local Labour Party, which the local Labour Party helped to save last year. Yeah,
it's a lovely cinema. I've never been before. It's so fancy.
Stunning.
Anyway, we're running really late because I accidentally told everyone that we were going to the Curzon in Soho, where we all convened, and then turned out it was Curzon Mayfair. So we ran here. It's really, really hot outside, and we're having a quick glass of wine before the movie. So we'll probably just cut straight to the chase, go and see the movie. I'm excited about it. Are you excited?
Very excited. A big fan of Ocean's 11, the Soderbergh. I was about to say the Soderbergh original Ocean's 11, but actually it's not the original Ocean's 11,
remake,
which I've never seen. But I absolutely adore Ocean's 11. Not so convinced about Ocean's 12 and 13. I rewatched them all recently in preparation for this.
Wow!
Although I did actually give up halfway through Ocean's 13.
I can imagine. I just rewatched 11, and 11 was great, and I thought I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anna, are you excited?
I'm really excited. I've been wanting to do a grifter on the show for a while, so this is going to be a good practice for the long con.
Okay, awesome. Right, we're going to go, and there's no food here, so we're going to have sweets and wine for dinner, and we'll see how we feel after the movie. Okay, bye.
So you want to hit a jewelry store?
Not exactly.
A diamond mine?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Or what? The Met.
In 3.5 weeks, the Met will be hosting its annual ball, and we are going to rob it. Lucky you. $16.5 million in each of your bank accounts 5 weeks from now. That's a lot.
Right, we are back after watching Ocean's 8. There's like one of those big kind of true size cutout cardboard things of the 8 women in the lobby.
Standees, Cathy, that's the official.
And we're dying. Yes. Oh, because I didn't mention Andrea also used to be working in cinema.
That's why I know it's called a standee.
So you've got a lot of those in your bedroom.
Back in the days when you used to be able to keep that stuff, I think these days in cinemas you now sort of send it back to the distribution company, whatever. Actually, that reminds me, this will also age me.
Okay.
But I do remember working in cinema when Con Air came out, and we did have one of those we had a life size. They're the kind of plastic things you can put on a glass door, you know, and then you can peel it off again. Kind of life size of John Cusack. I may have held on to that.
Oh my god, amazing! Put the bunny back in the box. Yeah, I love it. And I remember when totally off topic, but when Barbed Wire came out, the Pamela Anderson movie, apparently everyone stole those things from the cinemas because it was just like a massive Pamela Anderson thing back in the day. But anyway, we digress. So we're just out of Ocean's 8. We're back recording in the bar. So normally Dave and I record our walk home from the cinema. Obviously us three live in all different parts of London. I live in Surrey. So we're just going to sit in the bar and drink wine instead. Right, Andrea, thoughts?
Oh gosh, in a nutshell, disappointed. I'm afraid. Yeah, I did. Actually, I have to say I watched Oceans 11, 12 and 13 in preparation for this, and I was thinking, well, as long as it's better than Oceans 12 or 13, and actually arguably it is, but yeah, I'll get into why shortly, but
yeah,
unfortunately.
Okay, so Andrea is our writing expert, so we'll go back to her on the script. And I should mention that is written by Gary Ross and Olivia Milch, and it's directed by Gary Ross. So we'll get to that. It's an all-female reboot that's directed by a man. Hannah, what did you think?
I think I'm with you, you know, like I was kind of 30% with it, and then there was quite a drastic drop-off for the rest of it. There was like I don't want to ruin it, obviously, before we get to spoiler street. Yes. But there was a dramatic drop-off about halfway through when I lost
Interesting.
interest.
I think I liked it more than both of you. Do you know what? I had a lot of fun, but now at the end of the day, I always have fun at like movies aimed at women, starring women. I loved the setting of them heisting, if that's a word, the Met Ball, and like the fashion and the jewellery, and I really, really enjoyed that setting. And interestingly, another movie that was out this summer that is really bad, I Feel Pretty, is set in the beauty industry.
Yeah.
And that was the element of it I enjoyed, because you never see movies set in the beauty industry, right? It's always like fashion or nothing. So that was actually like, I just really liked that. Now, I Feel Pretty is really bad. This is a much better movie. But I completely agree it dropped off at the end. And all of a sudden, it just went, this is a bit lackluster now. And I really, really miss Steven Soderbergh's direction. Is it Soderbergh?
Yeah.
I really miss his direction, because this is no Ocean's 11, which I just rewatched last weekend as well.
Yeah, Ocean's 11 is so stylish. It's so just beautiful to look at, and the soundtrack is fantastic. Soderbergh always does brilliant soundtracks, and actually that's another saving grace of 12 and 13 as well. But and actually going back to the idea of them, obviously the fact that they're all women, the one plus I would say actually is it's a bit like Bridesmaids actually, where it's this wonderful thing where I felt like I didn't notice they were all women, if that makes sense. So actually it felt, there's sort of pretty much one scene, I'd say, where the fact that they're all women basically had absolutely no bearing on anything about their characters, really, I thought, or what they did. So I think part of me was a bit disappointed that it, beforehand almost, that, it's going to be diamonds and it's the Met Ball and that's so girly, and why did they have to make it, because it's about women, starring women when they're doing the heist, why does it have to be around fashion and stuff? But actually, when it came down to it, there was literally nothing about their characters where, as I say, that I in any way I thought drew attention to the fact that they were women,
it was
which
much
is actually
better
really nice. They just happen to be women.
They were real characters, and I would probably compare it favourably to the recent Ghostbusters
which I
reboot,
loved.
which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But I feel like the characters were much different in this one than the Ocean's 11. Bar, I thought Kate Blanchett was pretty much Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I felt like they were actually their own characters a bit.
Although I suppose, I think for me, when I'm trying to now think about why I was disappointed by it, I was thinking about how I didn't have any emotional connection in any way at any point in this film. So actually, in terms of their characters, I felt they were quite thin. I didn't feel like I really got their backstories or really got their motivation.
I think I agree with you. I think the only one with any dimension to her was Sandra Bullock. The rest of them were kind of there to shadow her and to support her, which is fine, and that's like how films work. But I also I completely agree with you. I had the same initial response of like, oh well, of course they're going to steal some diamonds because they're girls. Like no one's going to steal a rocket in a girl film. But then I found myself becoming more and more annoyed at Anne Hathaway's manicure throughout the whole thing. I was like, why does she have the French tip acrylic that no one has had since 2003?
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Oh,
but God. I would have minded.
Details, Hannah.
Details.
So then I can't be annoyed that it was diamonds, because the only thing I was thinking about was nails the whole time.
But do you think though that? Okay, so Ocean's 11 obviously had 3 more characters than this, so already we've cut out a few.
It's quick maths.
Do you think? Yeah, good maths. Do you think though that the characters in this one are any more poorly drawn than in Ocean's 11, or
question.
do you think when there's that many characters and that kind of a plot that it's hard to? I didn't emote to anyone in Ocean's 11 last week when I watched it, except Ocean's 11 had a really good baddie with Andy Garcia, and this movie didn't.
Yes, and that's the thing. And actually, it might not be that you have to know all the characters' backstories and these kind of things, but I think you do need to know their motivation. And I think you do need to, and that's the other thing actually going into, like, I think having seen especially 12 and 13 after watching, well, half of 13, that's all I can manage, it makes you realise I made me realise that actually, because for me, heist movies are kind of like, if you're going to give me a menu of movies I can choose to see, it's going to be this kind of movie, that kind of movie, I'll be like, heist movie, yes, absolutely. It's like, even like pizza, even when it's bad, it's good, you're still going to enjoy it. But actually, that said, when you start to drill down into it and having especially watched those Ocean's ones back to back, you realise, I think the sort of the ingredients that make a really good heist movie and the things that don't, and I unfortunately think this had some of the ingredients that don't. So going back to this idea of characters and stuff, you don't need to know all the characters' backstories ins and outs, but I think you do need to know the characters' motivations, these minor characters, and you definitely have to have something emotional going on that actually makes you feel something for at least the main character. And of course, going back to Ocean's 11, there isn't an emotional sort of and the ex story. It's Julia Roberts, but of course she's his wife. So there's a big emotional story going on there about his ex-wife. And so when we realise that actually that Julia Roberts is the reason Clooney wants to rob the casino in Ocean's 11 is because Andy Garcia is dating his ex-wife, basically. So Brad Pitt gets really upset, you know, about that. So there's an emotional thing going on. And also the buddy stuff between Brad Pitt and George Clooney feels quite, definitely for me, more well-rounded and more affectionate, and I got something a bit more than you do here, I think, with Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett's character. So I think you've got to still have some kind of emotional connection to the your real main characters that are holding everything together. And that's another thing I realised watching 12 and 13. They didn't give Brad Pitt and George Clooney the lovely lines of dialogue and the lovely kind of brotherly stuff between them that made partly you realise made Ocean's 11 really special.
And it's
hard
hinted
at here with Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, but I still felt it was somehow missing.
Development
no.
Well, they don't have the same, because I mean, at the end of the day, I feel so sorry for anyone, and in this case, Sandra Bullock, who's a fantastic actress. George Clooney just has to walk onto screen and you love him, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, I think he had a very heavily publicised friendship with Brad Pitt. So I think they were very good friends in real life, and we were also used to seeing photos of them together, and we already had kind of bought, for me anyway, I would have already bought into their relationship. I've never seen a photo of Cate Blanchett, and now you don't have to have seen it, but you know what I mean. I feel like we were already buying into that.
You wouldn't even connect them.
No, you wouldn't.
And actually, again, if you watch Ocean's 11 now, it's like peak Clooney and Pitt.
Yeah.
They have never looked more beautiful than in that film. They really haven't. They're like kind of, it's peak gorgeous Brad Pitt and gorgeous. I don't even fancy Brad Pitt that much, but they are kind of at the peak of their game in that film.
They've got amazing chemistry, and I feel for anyone trying to reenact that. Albeit, Sandra Bullock's like America's sweetheart, and I think she does a really good job for this. But I think we should just get him into Spoiler Street. What do you guys think? Spoiler so far.
Yeah, it's kind of part of the heist movie to not spoil it all.
So we are now on Spoiler Sofa for Ocean's 8. Interestingly, just a little quick note on Olivia Milch, who's only written a couple of things, but she's one of these kind of hot new writers. She is writing the upcoming Barbie live action, which is going to star Anne Hathaway. And there was a Barbie joke aimed at Anne Hathaway in this movie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which
is
so
I
thought that was really interesting. Now I'm really glad a woman co-wrote it. And honestly, I think Gary Ross is a really great writer. I loved Pleasantville, which he wrote and directed. But I'm also a really big fan of Big, which he wrote.
God. And Dave, have you ever seen Dave?
I love Dave.
Dave is literally Big
Such
and Dave are two of my favourite films.
Yeah, so he's
my favourite screenplays.
I really like him, but I do think, and this is not reverse sexism, it's just because, as we know, almost no female directors in Hollywood get any work. And if you're going to go to the effort of making an all-female reboot or prequel or whatever this is, I would just think you need to get as well as the hot new writing talent they have, get a hot new female director and just go for it.
They're out there.
They're out there, it does not need to be Gary Ross, and he's not got the style of Steven Soderbergh anyway. It's not a particularly stylish movie. It's a very much journeyman. He gets from A to B, and it's fine.
Very pedestrian.
Yeah, there was no. He didn't bring anything to it. And then the funniest part for me is skipping right to the end. There's a gag where Anne Hathaway, the actress, is now so rich that she can afford to be the female director. And there's a gag about how basically she needs to surpass being an actress and be so rich before she can get a chance to be a director. And I thought, but this is a joke written by and directed by a man. So actually this makes me feel a bit weird.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that landed at all. I didn't think it was appropriate. But that's completely by the by, and I'm going to get off my high horse now. So what did you think about the way? Have you seen Ocean's 11 lately?
Yeah.
You have seen it.
I think you're absolutely right about how stylish Ocean's 11 is as a film, and where this fell short for me is you can't get more stylish than the Met Gala. I didn't care what any of them were wearing. I didn't see a single outfit where I was like, that is stunning. Did you see the Met Gala this year? Celestial bodies being the theme, and the stuff they were wearing, they all came in dressed like the Pope. And
I didn't see that.
The theme of the fictional Met Gala in the film was European royalty.
Yeah, which
so you would have seen stunning brocade intricate jeweled bodices and all of this stuff, you don't see any of it.
They didn't even linger once on somebody's outfit, did they?
No.
It didn't really convey the sort of vibe of what it's like to actually be at that event, particularly.
No, it was all too busy showing us like the toilet cubicles, and again, that's fine. Like, show us the setup of the heist, but you're right, it just didn't have any sort of pizzazz about it.
And I think that's the thing about going back to sort of heist movies and what makes a good heist movie. I think that like in Ocean's 12, they did the classic thing with the sequel where you take it abroad. It sort of starts off in Amsterdam, and then it's with this whole other little sort of mini heist before you actually get into the meat of the actual real heist. And watching 12 and the 13, it makes you realise again the beauty of Ocean's 11. I think partly is it's such a neat, beautiful heist. It's just that heist. That is the movie.
Yeah.
Of course, this is nice. It opens. Ocean's 8 opens with the nod to the opening of
scene by
Ocean's 11.
scene.
It's her. It's Sandra Bullock there, just as George Clooney is there. About to be released from prison.
Did you think that was a bit ham-fisted though? I thought it was a bit much.
I thought it's kind
he's
of.
My brother, and we have
quite cute
identical lives.
Yeah.
To the point where the tuck's out waiting for him, and she's got like this bejeweled gown out waiting for
him. Yes. And it's a bit actually going back to like Gravity. There's this whole sort of debate about whether in Gravity it's like she's really such a strong character because in the end she's doing what George Clooney wants her to do. It's like so even though there's not a man in this film in the sense running the show, but there's still this connection to
at
her.
the end.
She is.
In the final scene, she's got an undone tuxedo bow tie on,
and I just kept thinking, don't bring George Clooney out. Please don't bring George Clooney out, and they didn't.
I know. That was one saving grace. But the whole thing is that in this film, if you think again about how Ocean's 11 ends, and there's just this beautiful. It is like a ballet, isn't it? These things when they're so beautifully executed, when a heist is so beautifully executed, and it takes you on this lovely arc, and you get this lovely kind of buzz inside when you see them all pull it off. And in Ocean's 11, they just walk out, and then you get the back thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is how they did that walking out bit. And then they're all standing there watching the Bellagio fountains. There's this bit, we're on spoiler sofa, right?
Yeah.
So this is okay. When each of the women walks out, and this is the bit I meant earlier when I said this is the only bit where I actually felt, well, this is because they're women, they can kind of do this. They each walk out individually, dressed to the nines, out of the Met Gala. I think that's the only thing that came close to that kind of feeling you're talking about of like when you see all the jewels and stuff.
That
and
was
so you
awesome.
And if the movie had ended there, beautiful.
Yeah,
like,
it ended and then it just kind of fell apart.
But then it goes exactly, and then it tries to do too much. And I think, and before all of this ever, throughout all of this as well, for me, the big thing was there was absolutely nothing went wrong. Nothing went wrong for them. And the classic heist movie, again, things would go wrong and you're on the edge of your seat because you think, how are we going to get out of this? How are we going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And the only thing it felt like might be going wrong was when Helena Bonham Carter is looking at the necklace and it's trying to get to 100%. And I think, oh my God, it's going to stop before 100%.
And then it didn't even stop.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
So nothing went wrong for them. Nothing went wrong for them in the execution of the entire thing.
Yeah.
So there was no tension for me. That was the biggest thing. I think there was no tension for me and I felt no emotion. But then there was literally the only time I was properly surprised in this movie was when James Corden turns
Oh my God, James Corden. There's like a collective groan.
He's not in.
Yeah, collective groan. I just thought I can't. And like, I'm actually a fan of James Corden, right? I like him. Yeah. But this is just like, it felt like first of all, that he had a fake English accent, which is very strange for someone who is English. And he was poorly written and like just, ugh.
Who even was he? What was his purpose?
Yeah,
It
was
from
embarrassing.
The insurance company, I think.
He was too young though. It should have been someone who was much older because he's like, I've known your family for a long time. And it's like, you're at
You're
most
12.
35. Yeah, like it's not appropriate.
That's true because she put away his father as well, right?
It was just really bad.
So
but speaking of, right, we'll forget about James Corden. We'll speak about the fantastic cast that was in this. So as we said, Sandra Bullock is Debbie Ocean. So she is Danny Ocean's sister from Ocean's 11. Now I thought that was a little bit unnecessary, but I didn't mind it.
Can I just say it would have been better if they called her like Danny Dyer, called his daughter Danny.
She should have been called Danny with an I. Speaking of, I am missing Love Island to come here tonight. I'll say that much. Kate Blanchett is basically she's basically Brad Pitt, right? That's all we can say.
She's Debbie Harry, circa 1979.
Slash Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. And we've got
amazing.
Anne Hathaway, who plays Daphne Kluger, who's like a massive celebrity, who I have to say, I really enjoyed her.
Yeah, I felt like she could, again, if it had been written even bigger and better, she could have had tons of fun with that. I felt like she was on the edge of having, she was trying to have as much fun as she could have done with
she
that.
was so close to like just ultimate diva, but she never quite made it.
And again, the director just
they didn't give her a diva dress.
Yeah.
They didn't give her the, this is flat out criticism of the direction here. He didn't give her enough room to just go for it, because I think she was going for it, and it should have been captured somewhere. Now,
and she gets a line of dialogue where she's horrible suddenly to her assistant, isn't she? And she takes the piss out of her assistant. So but then she's never horrible again. And it's like, make her just consistently an awful diva.
And Anne Hathaway has I think is very unfairly quite bullied by the press, and everyone was so horrible to her when she won her Oscar. And I like that she was kind of sending herself up a bit. Then we have Mindy Kaling as Amita, who is a jewellery maker, who I enjoyed, and again she had a solid purpose. Whereas, for example, Sarah Paulson, who was Tammy, a suburban mom and profiteer, according to the synopsis, so first of all, so Mindy Kaling as a jewellery maker, she had such a specific role in the movie, and she was completely important to the plot. And then Sarah Paulson as Tammy was just, I can pretend to be a PA. I can pretend to be
they brought her in as the fence.
Yeah, but she didn't
But
fence
they don't
anything.
need a fence.
No.
The whole scheme doesn't need a fence, and the whole premise is that Sandra Bullock spent 5 years coming up with this plan. You don't need a fence for no reason if you've planned it for 5 years.
They didn't use her at all. Then we have Awkwafina, who was Constance, a loudmouth street hustler and pickpocket, who I really enjoyed. She was cool.
I just felt it's one of these things when someone's on screen, and even if they have 10 seconds, they're just brilliant and they just shine, and she's like that. But she's not given more than 10 seconds of dialogue or whatever.
She's completely emergency.
Fantastic,
she's the hottest talent at the moment, right? She's doing so much stuff, including I think it's called Rich Young Asians, which is a huge movie coming out. And again, she should have had more. What she was was now I've forgotten the name of the actress, but did you see Girls Trip last summer?
No.
There was a breakout performance by this actress who was just so gross out and funny and hilarious.
Tiffany.
Yes, Tiffany something.
Tiffany.
Possibly.
Yes,
and she was just given loads of room to shine in that movie, and I feel like Awkwafina should have had this. Then we have Rihanna as Ninebald, which was a ridiculous name, but she's a hacker. And I have to say, I think Rihanna's a really good actress.
I really do.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
But again, I feel like she wasn't given very much. But actually, going back to this idea of they're all given a role to do, and what's Sarah Paulson's role really, sort of thing. Rihanna, Rihanna. It's because I've got lots of friends called Rihanna. I keep saying it like that now. Rihanna, her character is doing everything. She's doing all the heavy lifting, doesn't she?
Why is
she
she earning the same cut as Sarah Paulson, who's basically gotten a job as a PA? So she's probably being paid anyway.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But every time I see Rihanna in a movie, I'm like, she's a really good actress.
Yeah.
Because usually, because she's such a humongous celebrity and in herself is such a style icon that you'd almost think it was stunt casting. But she doesn't feel like that. She's very happy to be, a very secondary character and just do it. Then we've Helena Bonham Carter as Rose Weil, a ditzy, disgraced fashion designer who we have to talk about. As soon as they said she was Irish, I just died.
Which I completely miss, I have to say. And so at some point in the movie, when she suddenly starts talking in an Irish accent, I was like, what?
It was so embarrassing. Now, she's English, right?
Yeah, she's not just English, she's aristocracy.
I just think, I get when Americans...
How was her accent?
It was shocking. So, right, Hannah's parents are both from Cork.
So this is the Don Cheadle equivalent, right? So this is the Don Cheadle doing a Cockney guy in Ocean's 11.
I have to say, it's not as bad as Don Cheadle's, but he's the absolute worst, right? So, I actually had forgotten how bad he was until I rewatched it, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So basically, I'm from Cork, and both of Hannah's parents are from Cork, so we're authorities on a Cork accent. Now, I don't think she was doing a Cork accent, to be fair. I don't know what accent
but
she was doing.
But she was doing this sort of catch-all British person doing an Irish accent.
She was doing Tom Cruise in Far and Away. That's pretty much what she was doing. At one point, I nearly thought she would say top of the morning to you. And
it was very
and there was no point to it. You're right, she was the Don Cheadle. Because the way apparently Don Cheadle's character wasn't supposed to be English, and then he introduced it. I wonder if Helena Bonham Carter was like, I need to just have something a bit different.
That's what I never understand when I see bad accent in a film, and I think I'm not hypercritical of accents anyway, so I'm glad you said that you didn't like it either, because I think that when I know what someone sounds like in real life and I hear them doing an accent, I'm like, nope, it just doesn't sit right in my ear. But I'm glad you thought it wasn't good either. But you sort of think, how many people are being paid to work on this film? You've got to have an accent coach. Helena Bonham Carter is a good actress.
Yeah.
If she can't do it, who can do it?
You would assume being from England, right? It's actually very easy to fly across on a Ryanair flight for 20 quid, go to Ireland and do a bit of research, right?
And also, why do it in the first place? Because she was clearly, why couldn't she be a sort of bonkers Vivienne Westwood?
Yeah.
Very clearly with her styling. That's what they were going for. They were going for Vivienne Westwood.
And it was very Helena Bonham Carter herself, right?
It was. I enjoyed actually for her, because, I'm a very big critic of Tim Burton movies. I'm not into them, and I'm not into Helena Bonham Carter in those movies. I'm so over it. So for her to see her playing someone a bit shy and a bit stuttery and a bit different, I liked. So I have to say, I didn't. When I got over the accent, I did enjoy her performance. I just thought, but why?
Yeah.
And almost like maybe they were trying to homage / take the piss out of the Don Cheadle thing. I don't know.
And it goes back to this thing about character and motivation and things like this. If you get that stuff right, then you also enhance the plot. I.e., like I said, everything was too easy for them. There were no hitches for them whatsoever. And what could have been a fantastic big hitch would have been her trying to get Anne Hathaway. That was the other thing. It's a classic kind of movie where I watch it and I almost want to lean across to you and go, Sorry, what happened there? What happened there? Well, but then I feel really stupid that I've maybe misunderstood something. Like, for example, we'll get into this, I'm sure, because I know you want to talk about Hannah, like the big motivation in the end for Sandra Bullock's character and trying to get her own back on this guy. Mm-hmm. But that whole reason why she wants to get her own back on this guy, I was like, I don't completely understand what just happened there, because I don't maybe understand the painting, I would say painting selling industry. There's a better way of describing it than that. But so I got a bit off track there.
I felt the same. There were a lot of points where I'm like, I don't feel like Helena Bonham Carter would have been that easily swayed. Like, I missed that I was like, so hold on, how have they managed to get her on board with 2 sentences?
Anne Hathaway just like that, and exactly, where did they get these people from? That's the other thing in a heist movie, when you're pulling together your gang, and it's like, I need the tech guy, and I need the acrobatic guy or whatever, and I need the person that I need the pickpocket, and all these sort of things. You need that kind of, where are they coming from? How do I persuade them?
And if you have someone who's not already in the criminal underworld, which Helena Bonham Carter wasn't, and she owes money to the IRS, whatever, I just don't think that if I was sitting on, as an Irish woman, as Helena Bonham Carter is in the movie, if you're just sitting on your own, desolate because your fashion show just went really badly and you owe all this money to the IRS, and 2 criminals walk over to you and say, we've got a heist, I just feel like I would think there's something dodgy here, like these are plants from the IRS, or I just don't like, she should journalist, like she shouldn't have been so quickly sold, whereas of course the others are all criminals. Of course I'll believe that, like, a pickpocket wants to do this. So I felt like that, and I really enjoyed, so for anyone who's on spoilers so far who hasn't seen the movie, basically Helena Bonham Carter is a legitimate fashion designer, and they convince Anne Hathaway through kind of getting Helena Bonham Carter's picture in page 6 or whatever, that she wants Helena Bonham Carter to dress her for this ball. But that could have been more elaborate, and that could have been fun, because I was really enjoying that, and then it was over and I thought, oh,
exactly, that's the thing. They make all these little, this is the stuff, I think it's like the linchpins of these kind of movies. Mm-hmm. You have to go, right, this is the point where they persuade that person, it's the point where they get that person on board, it's the point where they do this, and you make that bit really dramatic and interesting and a bit surprising and stuff. And in the end she has dinner with Anne Hathaway, and Anne Hathaway's a massive fan of hers, so it's all super easy.
Yeah, so I did enjoy the comedy when they said don't look at her, because basically she was negging her, and it's silly, and you'd have to have seen the movie, but I thought it was quite funny when Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett were like out the window.
Yes,
so that she was
the
looking
only
at
time
them
as well I think I actually laughed out loud, apart from when I laughed with surprise when James Corden showed up.
Yeah.
But
Everyone laughed though in the whole cinema when James Corden, and look, granted there was like 7 people at the movie aside from us, but yeah, I think like in terms of the overall heist, like I personally, and I can see why you would have had reservations thinking that it was like maybe a bit sexist, but I personally really enjoyed the Met Ball setting, and the fact that they were like 3D printing the necklace, and like my main concern about the heist overall at the end was at the very end. So I think they've promised everyone $16 million, and then they say, surprise, we didn't just rob this necklace, we robbed like 100 of the necklaces, and now you're all going to get $30 million. And I just thought, well, that makes no sense, because if they've agreed to X amount and you're the boss and they've done their bit to get that amount, and actually none of them had any involvement in the other part except for Mindy Kaling, to be fair, and they bring back the really acrobatic little guy from the Ocean's 11 movies, why would they get more money? Why would they split that money with them?
This was my major like drop-off point with the film, is like when you work out that it's all for a bloke, and the whole point of the film is like, oh, women working together, and no, but actually it's all for a bloke. So I think they brought in the multiple necklaces at the end, being like, oh no, but that was just the baby heist. The real heist was actually about us women doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. Even though a man,
but I wasn't sold. It felt like an add-on.
Yeah, it felt really bad, didn't it?
Yeah, and in terms of how they actually wrote that bit as well. I was very aware of this, what happened, because again it's this like why am I not feeling the excitement I should be feeling about the revelation that they've stolen those stuff? And what happens, well, that's the thing, what they do is they have all the ladies there in their kitchen, whatever, and they go, haha, but that wasn't really it, and they open the fridge, whatever, and there's all the diamonds, and then they show you in flashback how they did it. Now that stuff actually makes a big difference. If you go straight to the flashback and you showed all that great stuff where they get the acrobatic guy from the original Ocean's 11 film and they do all that sort of bit and then they show you the sort of reveal, then you get it. But in the end, the thing is, watching the flashback that they've already stolen the diamonds. You know they're successful because you've seen all the diamond necklaces that they've stolen. So there was all these elements, like I said, where I just felt no surprise and I felt no drama and no real excitement about what was going to happen or not happen. And go back to your point, Hannah, about the guy, that in the end, that's the other thing. If you're going to have that love interest element, the fact, again, I didn't feel like Sandra Bullock and Claude, what really was that relationship.
But then I do wonder, because you could argue that Ocean's 11 was all about a woman.
Yes.
So maybe I'm being too harsh on it, and maybe it is just a flip reverse, but I wasn't as invested in...
But they didn't seem to have... It seemed like he was some guy she was like most vaguely hooking up with, and then granted I think what happened was they were both arrested. My impression is he didn't deliberately screw her over, but they were both arrested, and instead of keeping his mouth shut when they were in prison, he basically dobbed her in, and then she was like prisoner's dilemma that she lost and she ended up in prison. That was my feeling. So I felt like he was more spineless than complicit in her arrest.
And that's the thing again. If you're going to have a love element in it, if you're going to have this sort of romantic element in it, you have to feel emotion. There has to be some depth to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it obviously is different from Ocean's 11 because in Ocean's 11, exactly like you said, it is about a woman. It is about Tess. It's about getting her back. And there's a beautiful moment in Ocean's 11. Do you remember towards the end where they catch on camera? He deliberately sets up Andy Garcia to see if Andy Garcia would trade in Tess basically to get his money back, and she realises that
I hate
he would.
that scene, but anyway, that's completely by the by.
But there is emotional thing there. But exactly here, I was just like, well, Sandra Bullock wants to do over a guy that she didn't have much of a relationship with anyway, as you say.
All they did was he made great.
That motivation is
job. It was a con. They were running a con together.
And she's a con woman anyway.
And exactly. And he picked her up doing the baby cons, and then he asked her to do one big one.
Yeah.
That was
which went wrong.
Yeah.
Do we really believe? Right. This is the same thing with Danny Ocean, but as we said, we feel like he'd better motivation because of his wife. Do we really believe that Sandra Bullock sat in prison for 5 years and only thought about this heist?
I thought you were about to say, and looked that good with that much makeup on.
With the whole thing. No one is wearing that much makeup in prison, and also...
And she was in solitary, hello.
Yeah.
You
don't, they do this bit where she walks out in this, stunning dress, and she's like, oh, I've got $45, I can go where... That is not how you get out of prison. In order to get parole, you need to have an itemised plan of who you are staying with, who is picking you up.
Oh, so this is why we invited you on the podcast.
Yeah. So,
Hannah's been on parole.
You need to know about prison, law systems, anything. I'm there. You can't, in order to qualify for parole, it's a very long process, and you have to submit a plan of where you're going, who you're living with, how much money you have. Or that you don't just walk out in an overcoat and heels and be like, all right, taxi.
In the original movie, actually, George Clooney had to phone his probation officer. Sandra Bullock had none of that.
Exactly.
So I have to say, right?
And actually, that's interesting because when we first see her, and she's the classic, and it's mimicking obviously Ocean's 11. She's wearing the orange sort of outfit and stuff. But then when she's let out, and she literally looks like Cher because obviously, bless her, she's had lots of work done as well as Sandra Bullock, clearly. So her face looks kind of frozen. She's wearing tons of makeup. She's dressed up to the nines and wearing this ridiculous Cher-like dress. I'm like, what? And then I was like, oh, that's because you go out in what you were wearing when you were arrested.
Which is why Danny was in his tux.
Which is why Danny's in his tux, exactly. And she comes out and she puts the watch on. And then, of course, actually one nice bit is that they do a call back to that when they later on in the film show what happened on the night when she's arrested. And, of course, as soon as you see that scene starting and she's wearing that dress, I'm like, oh, this is the night when she gets arrested.
It's a really lovely link, but it's called a dress out. That you choose before the clothes that you are releasing. You have to buy them in advance. You don't. It's not like in the Blues Brothers where he just hands it over in a plastic bag.
Again, Hollywood is wrong. I go, oh man.
And I have to say,
magic
right,
of movies.
like the probably, what would I say? I wouldn't say the little girl in me, but some part of me got so excited when the first thing she did getting out of prison was go to a makeup shop. Like, that was just, do you know what?
And her hair gets more and more voluminous.
She goes to a makeup shop, for anyone who didn't see it, say she's in the equivalent of like John Lewis or something, and she takes she just takes loads and loads of makeup off the stand, and then...
This is brilliant, actually, the best
to make this work, she should have had no makeup on because she was just out of prison, but anyway, she's plastered her makeup already. Then she goes over to the counter and just, because she's dressed in this dress and looks so expensive, and she just says, of course she has a fresh blow dry as well from Solitary, and she says, oh, I need to return these products, and they're like, you can't return them without a receipt, and she's like, but the boxes are all sealed, and they say, well, you can't return them without a receipt, and she's like, oh, fine, at least give me a bag. And then they give her a bag, and she just walks out with everything, and I just thought, you know what, I would absolutely love to do that.
I was going to say, will there be a whole spate of this going on now in department stores? I can't believe I didn't think of that.
I was thinking that, I was like, this is an awesome
Which
idea.
would be your department store that you'd rob?
Oh, God.
I mean, I just like...
Harvey Nicks, gotta be. Surely.
It would be a good one. I basically love... What I do is I get expensive products right as a gift, or I buy them, and then I never use them because I don't want to waste them, and then 4 years later I'm like, damn it, I never used that. It's completely
And I'd probably just go and get like sort of 4 of my regular foundation from Bobbi Brown or
exactly.
something.
Basically get like a cleanser
That would
from
be
Boots.
it.
But, and then I love the
Liz
scene where
Earle.
she like does like a little bit of a bit funny, where she like goes in and like manages to kind of con a hotel room for herself, and I was really enjoying the small little cons, and then it's like straight up to the netball. But I have to say honestly, I enjoyed it way more than you two, but I completely agree at the end it fell apart. But I love the experience, and I always say this in the podcast, I love the experience of going to the cinema with a group of women, seeing a female-led movie, because it's so rare. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
It never happens. This is probably maybe 3rd or 4th time this year I've managed, that this has actually happened. So that in itself, to see a female event movie
Absolutely.
is a big deal, and people can't diminish and say it isn't, because it actually is.
Yeah, and it would be awful if, I mean, the cinema was pretty empty tonight, and it would be awful if anyone uses this film as a kind of like, wow, look what happens when we have women, because I think it's nothing to do with a brilliant cast.
The cast
and
is
I do think it was the screenplay and the direction, and I think
they should be bold next time and just go all out and get
absolutely
really
there will be absolutely.
But it's doing well, and in the States, and people are pegging it for a sequel already. And one of the theories behind the fact that it was Ocean's 8 was that they want to do 9 and 10.
Yeah,
so they're going to go for a trilogy, and I'm like, just go for it. I'll watch it. But I think it's doing well enough in the States, because funnily enough, this is like potentially like 16, 17 years after the first movie, and this has a smaller budget than that movie had that long ago, like not talking about adjusting for inflation or anything like that, so that's terrible.
And actually, and also, like I said, my sort of original thought was, as long as it's better than 12 and 13, that's the other thing, because 12 and 13 are not great movies, and they're all directed by guys and written by guys and completely starring guys. And actually, going back to Ocean's 11, much as I absolutely adore it, I do think it's pretty much a perfect film, but it is now, watching again, like, it is sexist. There is some massive lack of women in there, and interestingly, of course, they bring in Catherine Zeta-Jones for 12, and then I was sort of looking up 13 before I watched it, and it was like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Julia Roberts both refused to be in Ocean's 13 because their characters were not developed enough.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So basically it was completely the guys ruling the roost in Ocean's 11, 12 and 13, and like I said, 12 and 13 are not great movies, and guess what, 11, even though Steven Soderbergh absolutely is a completely brilliant director, 11 was a remake. They did have a brilliant original story, so even though, and the screenwriter of that one's Ted Griffin. I think that's the other thing. I didn't laugh in this film. I didn't love the dialogue. I didn't feel like it really sort of zipped along, and that it kind of made me smile or made me laugh. And there's a lot, again, if you rewatch Ocean's 11, it's funny and it's charming, and there's lots of lovely little zippy lines, and people have real character and that kind of thing. And I think
that's the thing. Like, I think particularly Rihanna's character and Awkwafina's character, they could have had so many like snappy exchanges with Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, and they did really
interesting roles, didn't they?
Exactly. And there's kind of a couple of exchanges, and then everyone just agrees to do what Sandra Bullock says.
And it makes you realise again about the writing, that it boils down to the writing, because these are all brilliant actresses. And go back to Ocean's 11, Brad Pitt and George Clooney zing off each other beautifully in that first film, and then they don't in 12 and 13. And it's not Brad Pitt and George Clooney's fault. It's because they haven't been given great lines of dialogue where they zing off each other.
And Cate Blanchett is like hands down a better actor than Brad Pitt. Like it's not comparable. Like Brad Pitt was just playing, you know, a pretty guy who ate in every scene. Now, Cate Blanchett was kind of chewing in a few scenes, but they didn't go that far. But I have to say, as much as I said she's essentially the female Brad Pitt, I really enjoyed her because she's usually plays quite a different role. And they did mention she was Australian, which was funny because speaking of accents, I thought she was doing an American accent.
Me too.
She was. I think what it is that what they said when she said, I've got this friend who's a nutrition expert, she's an Australian. So in that bit where Cate Blanchett is in the heist as, you know, as the kitchen nutrition person, she is Australian, but she probably has like one line of dialogue that you actually hear at that point. So we don't hear her being we don't hear her being Australian.
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever hear her being Australian though. I can't.
No.
It was just like an Aussie doing a good American accent. What do you think about the other twist? Both twists were lame, I have to say, but the twist where Anne Hathaway was in on it, because the whole time I was thinking there's only 7 of them, so was the 8th Rihanna's sister or was the 8th Anne Hathaway? Yeah, I kept adding them up in every scene going, where's the 8th?
Oh my, I did not clock that.
Yeah, I was like waiting. I thought it was going to be Rihanna's sister, and then I thought, well, it has to be Anne Hathaway.
I would much rather it be Rihanna's sister, to be honest. I thought that was I really
liked that because she's really young as well, so like kind of the implications.
Like, of course Rihanna's got a sister who's a magnets wizard.
Yeah,
like,
of course. So when Anne Hathaway kind of strutted in and was like, I'm in on it too, and then they did more flashbacks, I was like, whoa.
I think it was an attempt to give her a bit more depth as a character, because I think what it was supposed to be was her being like, oh, I put on this thing for the camera of this like dumb girl who just wears dresses and can't really speak for herself at press conferences and stuff like that. And then at the end she's like, oh, I was onto it the whole time and I'm not as stupid as I look. Yeah, but I just didn't. It felt like, in the same way the Fridge Full of Diamonds felt like an add-on, it felt like I would have been happier with it if she wasn't there.
Why? Like, with Anne Hathaway as well, it's like, okay, you're like a famous Hollywood actress, fine, but you'd still be a suspect. If you were wearing this like $150 million necklace, you go into the bathroom and you come out without it, like, they wouldn't all say, oh, she's a ditzy airhead, forget about her. Yeah. She can't be the real culprit. And also, she would be the number one suspect.
Yeah.
Although I suppose James Corden does interview her, doesn't he? But and then they have that sort of simpering line of, I really love my job or something. And I think maybe you're supposed to think that he thinks, oh, isn't it wonderful interviewing this beautiful actress? But
yeah.
And also, if you're vomiting that violently, you are not fine 5 minutes later. Like, you're just not.
I did enjoy when
doesn't matter how good looking
it is, because you hear that they all did that like before the Oscars and stuff. They all like basically starved themselves.
Yeah.
So I did like that reference. Yes. And did you notice a little nod to the Casey Affleck character who's like the toy car? Cate Blanchett had the little toy boat.
Oh yes, of course, yeah.
But it wasn't that good either. It was like, whatever. And then they like, again, they were a bit Basil exposition, but at one point they're like, you want to know how we did this? We bought selfie cameras. We took a picture of the scene and then we put the selfie cameras in front of the cameras. I was like, oh, like they just kind of ruined the magic a little bit. So yeah, it's interesting because Steven Soderbergh did come up at the end as one of the like executive producers or something. But yeah, I just think the direction was lacking. And if you're not going to get him right, you can't get. Ideally you would just get him, even though he did direct the 2 bad ones, right? He did 12 and 13.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not going to get him, because apparently he only directs things like on iPhones now, you get you just go for it, get a new talent, and just Gary Ross doesn't need to be doing it.
I mean, I think it was Gary Ross's idea. I think this is basically. I mean, having watched them, I watched Press Junket. Yeah, I watched Press Junket, and which I now realise, of course, was held at the Met. So it was held at the museum. So
which was clever.
And at the Press Junket, basically it was his idea, and it was.
Good idea, to be fair.
Which is a very good idea. Yeah. And so, of course, him going to Steven Soderbergh and Jerry Bruckheimer, who was the original producer of those movies as well, who's passed away now. And then he brought on Olivia Milch to write with him because he wanted, obviously, a woman to be writing with him because, obviously, he's writing about women and for women.
At least he has the self-awareness to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he seems like a lovely guy. And it's really interesting, you say, going back to, Big and Dave are 2 of my... I mean, they're perfect screenplays. They're just perfect.
Penny Marshall could have directed this.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think Gary Ross is a really great writer.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure he's a great director. And I just think, and in this
What
one
else has he
again,
directed? He's directed The Hunger Games, which was like fine.
oh yeah, which one is he? And
He
well,
directed Pleasantville, which I am a massive fan of. But I
and
haven't seen it in a long
Seabiscuit,
time.
which is probably one of the worst best film
I've never
Oscar
seen that.
winners.
Oh God.
It's just a bit.
I don't think I could ever watch Seabiscuit. I don't know why. Even though we're not here to like give out about Seabiscuit. But yeah, I don't know if we've much else to say. Like, would you recommend it to somebody?
I think
Pregnant pause.
I'm a big fan, as you are, of like coming to the cinema and the whole experience. But right now, I just think there's better stuff going on.
Ooh. What do you reckon, Andrea?
Yeah, no, it really pains me because I was kind of willing it.
I mean, you
to
watched
be
3 movies,
great.
2.5 movies.
Well,
in preparation for
yeah,
this,
exactly.
and Fresh Junket.
Exactly. I'll have to do one of those lists, you know, when the real Star Wars geeks do that whole list of all the Star Wars films in the order of greatness, you know,
We'll have to watch
including
the
all the
original Rat
spin-offs.
Pack.
I'll have to do exactly. We've got
Yeah.
to do the original Rat Pack, Ocean's 11, and then I can feel I can. Well, I watched it all the way through, which is more than I can say for Ocean's 13.
Yeah. To be fair, I left it at Ocean's 11. I thought I'll just compare it to that one.
Yeah.
Because this is essentially
And it,
a sequel to that.
yeah, and it didn't have the self-indulgence of Ocean's 12. I just think it had that, unfortunately, that kind of thing which Ocean's 12 did have, which is the idea of a beautiful, simple heist is somehow not enough. You've got to do something else around it. You've got to take ages to sort of to get it all together, and then you've got to have some other spin-off story at the end with the whole James Corden bit. What happens after the Met Gala stuff?
I wish
And
you'd right if it ended on the
I
set.
just really, that's the thing. You can make a really simple, beautiful, probably shorter, but although it felt longer than it was. I was really surprised when we came out. I thought it was like we'd been in there for easily over 2 hours, and it
I was
wasn't.
on such a sugar high from the wine and the jellies that I didn't think it was that long.
What kept you going throughout it all,
I
Cathy?
mean, this isn't high praise, but I've been in movies that have dragged much longer than that. So that, I mean, that's really not saying much. Okay, one final scene, and then I'll get to if I recommend it. When they're all on the subway in the end, I was like, bleh, vomit. Like, I'm sorry, but Anne Hathaway, if she's supposed to be as famous as Anne Hathaway is, right, give or take, she'd not be just on the subway.
And
She
my
was wearing
problem
glasses.
with that final sequence is like, how are you laundering this money? You can't just go and buy things. You can't. That's so.
The other laundering was just to set up the boyfriend.
Well,
the old
exactly.
lady.
Like there's this whole sequence where all of the women who've been part of the heist get to like live out their dreams with all of this money, and Anne Hathaway's the director, and Rihanna's got her own pool hall and like all of this stuff. But like you've got
like
to
a pretty
clean that
sad
money
dream.
first. Like you can't just take $37 million and just go and buy something with it.
Maybe they do like Bitcoin or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know. It just seems like, so Rihanna's dream
That's
is...
the next heist movie. That's Ocean's 9
Yeah,
for you.
it's Bitcoin.
They could be a massive Bitcoin
But like,
heist.
Rihanna's dream is to
I'd
own
watch
like
that.
a really, really dingy bar with a pool table and just play pool with
She's
this old
living her
man all
dream.
day.
She's living a dream, Cathy.
Yeah, I just thought, no, I can't
That's the
bear
only
it.
dream she's allowed to
Yeah,
have.
and then what's her face?
Character.
Sarah Paulson's dream is to own a really big warehouse and just fence loads of things. Like their dreams, and Kate Blanchett's dream.
Exactly. Kate
Same.
Blanchett's dream was the only one that was emotionally. Again,
What is
I
even
felt like
to go on a
that, you know,
motorbike.
But who's she going to? Where's she going? Where's she been? No one knows.
Yeah.
No one cares. Like it was just a weird.
We'll
And I
find out in Ocean's
Oh,
9
she-
when she's
and I feel like she could have afforded the motorbike the whole time. I felt like Anne Hathaway.
That's true.
Anne
That's true.
Hathaway, given
Maybe
how
could afford
famous,
the time off.
maybe, and Anne Hathaway, given how famous she was, you would assume she could have afforded to maybe finance a small short that she could
Some
launch
indie.
herself as a director. Like, okay, fair enough. Like the street, like pockets, like watch snatcher. Yes, of course, she couldn't have afforded like this Brooklyn loft or whatever. So she genuinely got something cool. Sarah Paulson seemed to be a really rich kind of housewife anyway, who lived like in beautiful kind of, I don't know, Connecticut suburbs or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't.
And essentially, she just got a bigger garage to sell the
Yeah,
same
just
stuff
fence
out
things.
of.
But the funny thing is, right, I really want to get a soda stream, and she had loads of soda streams, and I literally was like, ooh. So I was into that. But other than that, no. And in terms of would I recommend this movie, yes, I would, because to see an ensemble cast of 8 women like this, at least a few of whom are over 40, lots of whom who aren't white and blonde, and 25. Yes, I would recommend it as an ensemble. And you know, again, I say this a lot, but it is, I think, a movie worthy of going to see with your friends, not just your girlfriends, anyone, and just actually just enjoy the performances and just be glad to see Sandra Bullock and Kate Blanchett together, because that's pretty cool, and all the rest of them I really enjoyed. And I'm such a Sarah Paulson fan. Now, I think she was criminally underused in this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
TV so far, I think this is the only movie I've Oh no, she was in that movie last. What was the movie with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep about the newspaper?
Yeah, The Post.
The Post. She was in The Post very
is,
briefly.
Yes, yeah.
But I guess for me at the moment, the best I've ever seen her in is the O.J. Simpson story. She's incredible in that. Yeah,
I think she's stunning.
She's amazing.
Stunning actress.
Yeah.
I only know from a few years ago now, but Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Oh yes, of course.
That's how I think maybe that was her kind of TV
and
breakthrough.
She's in all those like American Horror Stories.
Right,
and
yeah.
Such a good cast.
No, she is fab.
I definitely recommend, and I would definitely go and see Ocean's 9 again. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'm so glad you two came on the podcast.
Oh,
it's so fun.
so lovely.
Yeah.
Are we going off to like some sort of little heist in Mayfair now?
Yeah, definitely have a heist. I mean, definitely, there's a lot of rich people in Mayfair cinema. We'll say that much.
Cathy.
Well, you're definitely the poorest people in the cinema. But Hannah, can you tell us where we'll find your podcast?
Yes, so my podcast is called RedHanded. It's all one word, and you can find it wherever you find your podcast. And on the social medias, we are at RedHanded the Pod.
And it's all true crime, and you've loads and loads of episodes now, right?
Yeah, we're 52 from this morning.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
And you two were like in the top 20 for the Listeners' Choice Awards at the
Yes,
British
we
Podcast
were,
Awards, where we met, and which means you've got a lot of listeners, right?
Yeah, they're very supportive.
And
Have you done
Andrea,
I was just going to ask, have you done any heists in your
No,
real life crime stories?
we haven't because.
you should do.
No, I'm going to,
Rob
but the
Fitch
thing
Mayfair
is,
resident.
a good heist you don't know about. So finding a good one is very difficult. But I have been thinking about doing a bit of a rubbish one that went wrong because they're quite funny. Because we do a lot of murders, which some people don't like. And some of our best performing episodes have been ones where no one dies. So it'd be good to because we're not exclusively a murder show, so it would be good to find something where no one dies.
Red-handed implies there's a bit of blood, right? So you need some blood.
Not always,
that's spilled
sometimes.
in this heist. Yeah.
Or just being people being caught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, very clever. Andrea, where can people find more of you, or where?
Oh gosh, on Twitter mainly.
Yeah.
That's where I spend most of my time. I'm at Andrea Mann, MANN on Twitter, and AndreaMann.com.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of watch this space. I've got an idea for a movie podcast, which I'm hoping might happen. So
Yes, awesome.
Yeah,
We'll be back if that happens. I'm sure it will. And so, where can you find us? Oh yeah, so we're at the Cinemile on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're on any place you can listen to podcasts, and if you would like to, we would love if you would go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe and leave us a review. Okay, thank you. Bye.
These are all Russians. They're hackers. Are there no hackers who aren't Russian?
No, there's barely any Russians who aren't hackers.